All righty. Zach has brought some examples of problems that you might see in your garden. I hope you won't. But these are kind of common problems, and I have some of them almost every year. So let's start with, I know I just love fresh cucumbers, but they do get diseases.
Yes, they get diseases. And these two diseases I'm going to show that get on cucurbits are probably the two that homeowners confuse the most.
All right.
The difference between downy mildew and powdery mildew.
All righty.
So the first we're going to talk about is downy mildew. And what we see first, you'll start to see some yellow flecking.
Let me see if I can hold this up just a little bit. Okay.
You'll start to see some yellow flecking, and it's usually confined within the veins. It's very angular. And then later in the season, as the conditions develop, humid nights, you'll start to see on the backside, you'll see greasy spots on the backside of the plant. And you'll actually, if you look with a hand lens or some type of magnifying device, you can see the actual black spores on the backside of the leaf.
So this area down here is where it's actually producing spores.
It's producing spores, and those spores will get splashed by rain. They'll get blown by wind currents and spread to other plants.
Now, does this overwinter up here, or how does it get here?
This disease actually overwinters in Florida. And so where these plants survive over winter, the disease gets on the plants. And throughout the summer, this time of year, the spores actually get on wind currents or rain currents and go up the east coast.
Oh, so when we have winds coming up and travel
They
quickly?
can travel a couple hundred miles a day.
Whoa.
There's actually a website that our growers use, our commercial growers use. It's the Downy Mildew Pipeline. And
that's what it's called?
The Downy Mildew Pipeline, right. And the growers report it when they have it in their field. So growers north of them know when to spray protective fungicides and that sort of thing.
So that way they don't have to spray a protective just willy-nilly. They do it when they know it's on the way, which cuts down on the use of insecticides.
Right, so it cuts down on the use of
pesticides.
Pesticides, correct.
Okay, and so this was downy mildew, and that was on a cucumber, and then this is a butternut squash, and it has another mildew, but it's a different type.
Right, and this is actually powdery mildew, which is an actual real fungus. And so what we see on powdery mildew is on the top and the bottom side of the leaf, you can see these white clusters of powder. You can really see it. And it almost looks like somebody squirted baby powder on it.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Yeah. Now, and does that one also travel up and come as the summer gets hotter and humid?
Yes, ma'am. It actually blows on wind currents as well.
Okay. Now, is there a cure for these, or do we use a protectant sometimes, or do we just try to get our crop in real early?
Well, you can get your crop in early and try to avoid when the spores are being blown. The second thing you do is use some resistant cultivars.
Oh.
The HGI website has a lot of ideas that are for cultivars that have resistance to both powdery and downy mildew.
Well, that'd be a good decision.
Exactly. So those two things, but if you're worried about getting the disease, you can spray a protectant fungicide before the disease gets there, and hopefully you won't get the disease. But if you do, you can spray a curative fungicide.
All righty. And now if I have this downy mildew, powdery mildew, is that going to get on my phlox or my crepe myrtle or things that are susceptible to powdery mildew?
No. So the interesting thing is powdery mildews, they're host specific. So the ones that get on cucurbit crops, squash, cucumber, watermelon, those sort of crops, the powdery mildew only gets on those. So the one that gets on crepe myrtles and tomatoes is a different species.
Great. Okay. This is one of the saddest looking tomato plants I've ever seen because it looked like it was getting so big and healthy, and now it just looks deader than a doornail. What happened?
So we've seen a lot of this year from both homeowners and our commercial growers. It's called bacterial wilt, and the plants are super healthy, and they get up to about waist high, and then they start wilting, and then 2 days later they look like this.
Oh, well, what has happened?
What happens is there's a bacteria in the soil, and it travels through the roots, through little cuts and nicks in the root.
Sure.
And it colonizes the vascular system of the plant, and it actually blocks the plant, so it can't get water to its extremities, and that's why it wilts.
Now, you said you have some kind of diagnostic test you use sometimes to figure out if that's what it is. What you going to do?
So wilts are usually either fungal or bacterial.
All right.
And so the way to differentiate between the two, you can cut the plant here.
Because it's already dead.
It's already dead.
So we're trying to diagnose.
All right. So you can cut the stem.
Uh-huh.
And then you can suspend it with toothpicks.
All righty.
Without poking myself.
That's
see if
why
I can do
Clemson
this.
extension agents get toothpicks when they go out to lunch. And not going to pick their teeth, they're going to use it to spin roots.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
It's just like a potato or avocado.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. And so we're going to put it in the jar of water. And it's not going to happen immediately, but within 10 to 15 minutes,
All right.
we'll get what's called bacterial streaming, and that's the actual bacteria coming out of here.
If we see that, we have to make some decisions on planting. So tell me what that means as far as replanting tomatoes or other members of that family.
Right. So if you have bacterial wilt, that probably means you can't plant anything in the solanaceous family, tomato, potato, pepper, for a few years at least. So we should move to a different spot.
And you had an interesting story about a tiller or something and spreading this disease. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, so this year I actually saw a field that had bacterial wilt in it pretty bad, and they were tilling the soil, and then they took their equipment and moved to a different field about 300 to 400 yards away. Didn't sterilize their equipment, so of course they took the soil that had the bacteria in it to the new field.
Oh,
and so now that field has bacterial
for years
wilt,
and years and
unfortunately.
years.
Yes.
So this one we're going to watch during the show, and you think we'll be able to see this?
Yep. So this one, I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera, but you can see it, right, Amanda? It's streaming out on the backside.
Oh, now I can.
It's kind of oozing
now
out.
I can. Look at that.
Yep.
I can see it. Woo!
Yep.
It's really, 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 really faint. I don't know if y'all are going to be able to see it. It's like a tiny little thread coming out, but it looks like something out of a. It's coming out. Yep. Wow. If you were at home, you'd be able to see it. This is really cool. Science in action.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
woo, it worked.
Yes, ma'am.
We like it when
All right.
things work. Okay, and then these polo tomatoes, I can't make any kind of sandwich out of that. What's happening?
No, you don't want to eat that one. So these tomatoes have blossom end rot. We get a lot of calls about this time of year. It's a calcium deficiency in the tomato. Sometimes it can be a calcium deficiency in the soil, but more times than not, it's when tomatoes go through periods of wetness and then a dry period, a wet period and a dry period.
So try to keep the soil consistently not wet, but
damp to where
and a
it
home
is.
gardener can use mulch to help with that.
Exactly,
can't it?
exactly. Mulch
All
is a great thing to
And
use.
then, just so that we know that down at the research station we have some nice things, you brought us something nice.
Yeah, so some of the research at the research station in Charleston, they do some variety trials. And so here we have a variety trial of corn, and I brought a box for you guys to take home. So,
Well, I'm so glad you
yeah,
brought
we
us.
got some
It's
good,
beautiful.
some good ears there. Yeah.
Oh, that looks like one of those yellow and white ones that's so sweet. That's really
Yep.
fun. Thank
Yes,
you
ma'am.
so very much.
Yes.